It's classic character profile time, and this week we're going to be doing Andy McDonald, the man who's kept Steve away from his lovely Michelle for all these years.
And the person who always makes me think of Andy McDowell.
Who's that?
Famous siren of the silver screen.
Not famous enough for me.
In like the 80s or something.
Whenever I think of Andy McDonald, I think Andy, which is what Jim calls him. This is quite a difficult one to do some research for, because the Corripedia and Wikipedia pages on Andy McDonald didn't have very much on them, so I had to look in books and things to find out about this. And I found it quite interesting.
Books?
Yeah, I know. That old-fashioned medium.
What's this?
I find it quite interesting because I learnt about things that I didn't know about, because Andy McDonald's kind of main time in the street was the period that just before I started watching it. So I've been learning stuff this weekend, and I hope I'll be able to help other people learn about him too. Exactly. That's my job after all. So, Gemma, can you run down Andy McDonald's statistics for me, please?
He was born on the 26th of June 1974. Who else was born then? His parents were Jim and Liz McDonald, and he's got one brother
called
Steve McDonald, and he's got a sister called Katie McDonald.
Well, he did until she died 2 days after being born. So.
Wow.
Still counts.
He first appeared on the 6th of December 1989. He last appeared on the 20th of August 2009, but he's always close to our hearts. He has appeared in 612 episodes and played by Nicholas Cochrane.
Cochrane, exactly. So he was obviously cast alongside Simon Gregson back in the
yes, because
late
they
80s.
Look exactly alike.
They are non-identical twins, exactly. Well, they were mates together at school, and I think one of them's older than the other. I think that Simon's a year older than Nicholas is. But anyway, they were mates at school, and casting calls were put out by their teachers to say, well, they want two boys to be twins on Coronation Street. So the two of them had photos taken of themselves and stuff. They went to do an improv session along with Bev Callard and Charlie Lawson, alongside 28 other potential auditionees, and they got the job. It makes it awesome. And I don't think they'd done any proper acting or anything beforehand, so it was
his only gig.
Yeah, and the only one that Simon Gregson's ever needed ever since.
What a cushy job.
Now, back when they started, they were like the handsome, the lookers, the look at us.
The Heat magazine.
Yeah, exactly. The
centerfolds.
Yeah, because I mean, there wasn't really anything like them on Coronation Street before then, particularly. So he was doing his interviews with all the teen mags and everything. This is obviously pre-Heat days, but whatever existed back then. And Nicholas described his character Andy back then as a bit of a devil, a bit of a rogue. He always enjoys himself, but he hates to be told things. He's a sound character, a bit like me, but with brains.
See, I was going to say, that sounds exactly like Steve, but then he said brains at the end, didn't it?
Well, that was the main distinguishing feature, I think, between the boys at the time. It's a bit like Todd and Jason, really, isn't it? It's that kind of relationship, except they're not twins, obviously. He also said that the best thing about the McDonald brothers is that they stuck up for each other, and they get on most of the time. So let's have a look at Andy's history. He moved into number 11 on Coronation Street along with the rest of his family in 1989, and their first storylines involved getting on the wick of everyone else on the street, particularly Alf Roberts, who was the previous owner of their house, and back then is when he was in charge of the mini-mart down the bottom of the street. They annoyed him by kicking a ball through his shop window, and then on New Year's Day 1990, they found an abandoned JCB at the Maisonettes, which were being built there, and they accidentally drove it into the corner shop window. So what an impact those two had when they first started.
A literal impact. But then they had a love feud.
Yes.
They fought over Flick Khan, but Steve won that one.
Yeah, that was their first look into love.
At GCSE level, Andy got 3 A's, 4 B's and 2 C's. And he got better results than Steve, but he thought that his parents were more proud of him. So he decided he was going to join the army.
Yeah, because he was like the intelligent one and Steve was the not so intelligent one, even though Steve's results weren't so good.
Yeah.
Jim and Liz were showering him with praise, and he's like, right, that's it, then I'm joining the army then. Now, Jim, obviously, as we know, is ex-army, and so he obviously thought it would be amazing to have a son follow in his fatherly footsteps, and he took him along to the recruitment office and everything. But Liz was like, no, I've seen what the army does to people, no way in heck that my son is going to join the army. So she basically has to beg him to change his mind, and he does in the end. I can't really see Andy being the sort of person to go into the army particularly.
In 1991 at school, he took bets on who's going to win the FA Cup, and the headmistress did not like this and made him return all of the some money. So, obviously in spite, he dropped out of school.
Yeah.
And he got a job selling posters outside of concerts until the official merchandisers found out about it and saw him off, and then he went back to school again.
School for his A-levels. So, out of school that year, the twins built a radio transmitter and set up their own pirate station, because that seems like a very early 90s thing to do, isn't it? That's the sort of thing
that kids were doing in the 90s on TV, wasn't it? Setting up their own pirate radio
It's
stations.
very like Biker Grove, Grange Hill kind of stuff, isn't it? So I can't remember what Radio Weatherfield or something they called it, but they ended up getting a bit too far and making fun of all the residents nearby, like they had a character that was inspired by Ken Barlow called Captain Kenny, the android warrior of Weatherfield, and Liz made them stop doing it because they were upsetting the locals,
the people.
At the end of 1991, Andy ended up getting beaten up because Steve had some mates who were into stealing car radios. Andy dobbed them in. He got beaten up by these I suppose it's the foul skanks of the day.
Yeah.
If you can call boys that, I don't know.
Yeah.
And Steve,
don't be sexist.
Steve was terrified that he was going to be next on their hit list. We ran off to Cheshire with Vicky, his current flame at the time, future wife. And the stress of that was what caused Liz to go into premature labour. And, it's hours. Baby Katie died within. So not even days, like I said earlier. Tragic. 1992 was when we first saw a proper love interest for Andy, Paula Maxwell, who was a character that I had not heard of before this, so this is all quite interesting to me. She ended up actually turning down Steve for Andy, so Andy was the one that came up on top this time. And Andy, because he's so smart and brainy and everything, was able to trick Liz and Jim into letting her stay over for the night on the sofa, supposedly.
But they slept together.
Yeah, they did. They had bonking sessions on the sofa or bed or something
wherever.
like that.
No, we don't want to speculate. He got a part-time job at Better Buys, but meanwhile, Paula's grades started to suffer because of Andy's vigorous loving, and she avoided seeing him until after exams were over. I thought women could multitask, but apparently not. Andy camped outside her house, and then he got bored, and then he dumped her. But then they got back together and took their A-levels.
Hooray. It says Andy his head was not in the game. He walked out of his general studies exam because he hadn't been spending time revising for this ridiculous subject that I still don't know why it exists.
General studies.
I never did it. I think, if I'm remembering rightly back to my school days, everyone else had to do general studies or whatever it was called back when we did it. But I couldn't do it because I went to a boys' school, but I did my history A-level at the girls' school down the road. There were 3 of us that did it, and I had to walk for 45 minutes to get to the girls' school, and for various reasons this meant that I couldn't do my general studies, and I'm actually glad, because as much of a ridiculous subject, I wouldn't have been able to do it, because it involves actually knowing things about what happens in real life.
I think they talked about whether or not to make us do them without actually studying for it. And then they decided not to.
I think we had like little sessions and things, or the other boys in my school did, but it wasn't. Yeah.
Nobody takes this seriously. This is like even worse than media studies.
It is. Media studies is a fine subject.
Media. I'm not saying it's not a bad subject. I'm saying people don't take it seriously.
No. With general studies, I wouldn't have been able to do it, but I had to look on the internet when I was researching this at some past papers of general studies. It's all multiple choice. Well, it was back in
I think
2001,
I remember this. Yeah.
Which makes it interesting that Andy was unable to answer any of the questions. Surely
yes.
You might as well just have a guess.
Plot hole.
But anyway, what makes it interesting is what he then goes on to do at university, because over the summer he and Paula end up travelling together and stuff, and then they decide to go to Sheffield University together, but Paula backs out to go to Manchester Uni instead, and Andy studies combined studies at Sheffield. And is combined studies, I didn't look this up, is that the university equivalent of general studies? Like a little bit of everything, I can't really tell what I want to do, don't know what my character is going to go for, so let's just have a bit of everything.
Oh my goodness.
What?
I'm just looking up the current
general studies.
So this is from 2014, okay? This is the first question. Emancipation means wealth, freedom, justice, or power?
I could do that.
I think I could ace this.
Yeah, but we're not 17 and 18-year-olds. We're wiser than these.
No, but you students. Adults still take these qualifications.
Well, I'm glad that I didn't do it because I didn't need that hassle. I think schools like to do general studies as like an extra one to throw in. It boosts their grades because it's supposedly so easy to do. Anyway, so Andy was off in Sheffield, Paula was off in Manchester, but he dropped out of university in November because he couldn't bear to be apart from her. But she persuaded him to go back to university, so he did, and then they split up. So that was the end of the Andy and Paula
romance
saga.
It's like Charles and Diana. 1993, he returned from university at Easter and he got back to work at Better Buys, and he started to date Amy Nelson, who was a checkout girl, for a little bit, but then he dropped out because he found out she had a 5-year-old son.
Dropped out of the pursuing
relationship. He started seeing her again in the summer, and he spent a bit more time with the kid. But then he decided to go back. He decided he was going to quit university and get a full-time job at Better Buys, because what better thing to do for your future than to quit pursuing higher education and also work at a supermarket?
Yeah, but it's only combined studies.
He proposed to Amy. We're such snobs. He proposed to Amy, and then Liz and Jim were trying to talk him out of this and make him go back to Sheffield. But Amy says he will cut them out of his life if they carry on trying to stop him doing what he wants.
It sounds like Amy was a bit of a bitch.
Yeah, but then she moved to Trinidad in October to be with her son's father.
And there were some very interesting reasons behind this. I had no idea that any of this happened, unless I mentioned it on the podcast before and forgot, which is
perfectly possible.
So, the plan for Amy Nelson was to have her and Andy be Coronation Street's first mixed-race wedding, but then the actress, Louise Dupre, who played her, suffered this massive nervous breakdown over the pressures of fame. She quit the show after one scene one day, and this is what explained the character's sudden exit from the show. But they still wanted to do one scene with her, so they had to find a replacement actress. And who was a replacement actress? Only Melanie B, of Spice Girls fame, although she wasn't of Spice Girls fame back then because hadn't started yet.
Hadn't started in it yet. This was surely her first step on the road
to stardom,
absolute domination.
Yes, yeah. Well, she's probably culture. At the moment. I mean, let's forget about Victoria, who's got a fashion thing. Melanie B's doing pretty well for herself compared to a lot of the others at the moment, isn't she? With Dancing with the Stars and everything.
You detected sarcasm there in my voice, but I didn't mean it sarcastically.
I knew that she'd been on the programme before, and I knew that she'd been a checkout girl in like one scene or whatever, but I didn't realise she was replacing a character. And apparently the scene that she was in was very shady. The camera was mostly on Andy, and hopefully nobody would notice about it. I don't think they'd be able to get away with that these days, do you?
It does kind of smack slightly, and I didn't want to have to say this, slightly of racism, where it's like, just get a black girl in, doesn't matter, just make it dark, no one will notice.
I know. Well, early 90s.
Oh, it was a dark time then, wasn't it? It was terrible. But sad times, because the original actress did not end up doing well after this.
No, she...
say the very least.
Well, she was found dead of a drugs overdose in 2000, and apparently her body had been left undiscovered for weeks, so it was a bit tragic.
It's horrible.
Really,
it makes
really
you wonder what happens in people's lives.
The price of fame.
What do you mean, the price of fame? She was in Coronation Street for a little bit.
Well, it does. That's a really sad story, but interesting. I didn't know this was going on. Anyway, let's get back to Andy. Let's get on to something less sad.
Well, this is exciting because he tackled an armed robber at Better Buys and then he got hit over the head with a shotgun.
That's not how shotgun works. I think it only needs to turn.
Excuse me, it is in England, okay? We don't understand or like guns in this country.
So it's like a blunt implement here.
This is why we're not allowed them. Now, Jim was a security guard at the time, and he got very ashamed of himself because he didn't help out, and then he resigns.
Yeah, he was a security guard at Better Buys, obviously. So, 1994, Paula, that one that was before Amy, appeared as a checkout girl at Better Buys. Well, she wanted a job, and Andy, who had risen to the ranks of assistant manager at the time, talked Curly around into employing her. Paula wanted to rekindle her relationship with Andy, but he was not interested and backed off. So, in an attempt to get closer to Andy, she starts dating Curly, and it works. And somehow Paula, during a date with Curly or after a date with Curly or something, spent the night together with Andy. And things.
But then she goes back to university.
Yeah, things didn't go any further with them. That was it.
It seems to me like Coronation Street likes the idea of university as being like that I don't know what to do, I'm just going to quit this and go to university. But it's not actually how it works. Normally it's the other way around.
I mean, this is probably the closest anyone's on Coronation Street has got to having a full-time university education that we've seen on screen, isn't it?
It's stupid because the amount of people now that go to university is
numbers are
ridiculous.
rising, but on Coronation Street, literally nobody ever goes to university.
Or ever gets a degree.
Yeah, but he does. He ends up. He goes back to Sheffield at the end of that because he's questioned his priorities, and he is back being an academic again. And we start to see less of Andy after this, obviously, because he's off in Sheffield. There was a bit of something in 1996 where Curly was trying to set Andy up with Ice Queen Anne Malone, and that is a pun. She's the
well done, I know.
Yeah.
She ended up dead in the freezer.
That was brilliant.
She invited Andy to move in with her, but then gives him a rent book.
Yeah.
She's no sap.
No.
In 1997, he got sick of it and moved out, and she ended up pursuing Curly instead. Then Liz started dating ex-con Fraser Henderson, and Andy called her a whore and got slapped around the face.
Such a nice boy. What happened to him?
And then policeman Alan McKenna offered to protect Steve in prison, because he was in prison at this point, if she agreed to spy on what Fraser was getting up to. Then Fraser finds out about this deal, and then he holds Liz, Jim and Andy hostage at number 11.
Excitement. Well, it was all okay. Somehow
No, it wasn't okay, because Andy got traumatised by this.
Well.
He started being an alcoholic after this happened, and this led to Jim also becoming an alcoholic. And then the two of them started challenged each other to a drinking session, and then had a fight.
Yeah, and
then Jim and
Jim realised that what am I doing? I'm leading my son into the dark pit of alcoholism.
Let's not do this.
Let's do this for Peter Barlow of the future. So that was the end of that, and he got his degree 2-2 in combined studies
of something.
Not shabby.
And then after Jim confessed at Alan's wedding, he'd slept with Alan's bride Fiona.
Fiona, marry me, Fiona.
And he said, enough is enough, this is a load of crap, I'm going to leave Weatherfield for Spain to become an English teacher.
Yeah.
Because nobody expects Spanish people to be able to speak English properly.
You don't need a postgraduate education to be an English teacher in Spanish, just have to show up.
It's like getting an English driving licence. It qualifies you to drive everywhere because we are the best.
Yeah, exactly. So that was it pretty much for Andy. He was sadly a victim of Brian Park's axe, which took out Peter Baldwin and a few others. And he was filming a scene in the Rovers one day, called to the office and
what year was it he left, darling?
1997.
So in 1997 he was earning 60 grand a year for this. Blimey.
I know.
I want to be in Coronation Street. Now Brian Park said, did you say this already?
No, I haven't said
He was in a rut and they couldn't really find storylines for him, so get rid of him.
It seemed kind of true, but I think there is a bit of untapped potential with Andy, having listened to this about him. But he's been back a little bit, hasn't he?
Let me tell you when he's been
has
back.
he come back, Gemma,
In the year 2000, he returned to Weatherfield because Liz and Jim were having a remarriage, and then he had a one-night stand with Toyah. Then in 2004, he came back for Steve and Karen's wedding. And then in 2007, he decided to ditch Liz and Vernon's wedding, and he broke his leg to get out of it. And in 2009, Liz had to go back to look after Andy because he injured himself again, but then he returned with Jim for Steve's wedding to Becky.
He's basically just like...
The wedding guest.
The wedding, yeah.
The Wedding Crasher. There was the film about that. He told Steve to try to make this wedding last this time because he was fed up with turning up for all of these pointless weddings.
Well, he hasn't turned up. He didn't turn up to Michelle's wedding last year, did he? Nicholas Cochrane was probably on the... Whenever Steve gets a new fiancé, he's like, yeah, can I come back and have a job, please?
In 2015, they went on honeymoon to Spain with Andy, Steve and Michelle.
Yeah.
And then he blimmin' broke his leg again at the end of last year.
I've got a feeling he's broken it 3 times. We've only said twice here, but I think it's becoming a bit of a running joke for him breaking his leg.
Steve had to go over and help him.
Yeah, and now he's back.
Now he's back. Steve's back, not Andy.
Yeah.
Now, would you like to see Andy in it again?
I think I might do. And I would have said no up until this point, but I think that Steve could do... I'd like to see Andy back, but not because I want to see Andy, because I think it'd be good for Steve.
Can I tell you why? Because of Lloyd leaving.
I was thinking exactly. I thought that while I was on the toilet earlier. I'm sorry that slipped out.
I'm sure that he would be thrilled to hear that you were thinking of him.
Yeah, Steve hasn't got a laddie mate anymore.
No, he doesn't.
I mean, what's the closest that he can get to it? Tim, maybe?
I mean, there were probably more laddie mates together when they were kids.
Yeah. But who were? Steve and Andy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
now
they
they
definitely
can
were.
rekindle their romance.
I mean, they've obviously been rekindling their brotherly romance since, back in November or October, whenever Steve was away. They obviously get on like a house on fire, and I think if Andy got back, he'd be pretty much of a clean slate of a character, wouldn't he? Still the clever one, but they could do anything they wanted to with him, and he'd be a great friend for Steve.
I mean, you call him the clever one, but he's only compared to Steve as the clever one. So
yeah. As long as they didn't have a silly story where he ended up in bed with Michelle.
Probably would do.
But I wouldn't really care what they would do with him particularly. He's not like the most exciting, interesting, wow, this is a really memorable character or anything. He maybe was a bit dull, and I'm not completely surprised that Brian Park did axe him, but now would be really the moment for him to come back. Whether he will or not, I don't know. He's not done a huge amount sort of in showbiz since. He was in this is quite interesting. He launched a soap magazine, Gemma.
That's
A short-lived
really
soap magazine. So, magazine buddies, you and him. He did a bit of radio, a little bit of theatre.
We've got a special handshake.
In 2012, he was the executive producer of a sold-out Canadian theatre tour called Tales from the Street, which had a load of the ex-actors, kind of going around and just talking about their time on the show. These kind of things that never seem to happen in this country.
That's because it's like bread.
Yeah, and then according to Wikipedia, he's currently working on a film. You'd like this: A Study in Red, The Secret Journal of Jack the Ripper.
I'd like to see that.
I don't know how currently this is. I tried to find out about it on the internet. I've done searches for it, but it's not really come up with anything. So whether it's really new or whether it's old and then nothing has happened to it, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know what Nicholas Cochrane has really been up to. He's obviously he's not been like, right, I'm an actor, it's fine, I can find other jobs. He just clearly doesn't want to do that kind of thing, I suppose. But I'm sure I would have thought he'd a bit in their hand up if they asked him to come back to Coronation Street again. He seems the type like Charlie Lawson, like any excuse to get the McDonald clan back together again.
Maybe he's going to wait until the 2018 to release his film for the 130th anniversary of Jack the Ripper's evil deeds.
Good fact.
Thanks.
The other thing with Andy, though, is that he is quite a nice excuse for if Steve or Liz need to be away from the street for a little bit.
Well, this is what
everybody needs.
No, okay, this is what Sarah was. Now she's not in Milan anymore. They can't say, oh, what's that? Oh, I've got to go to Milan.
They've coped, haven't they? Well, they've still got Stephen over in Milan if they need to, haven't they? I think he's still there. I'd rather have Andy back, to be honest.
Now, I think that Coronation Street will not allow him in because they don't let people in who have got degrees.
No, they don't, do they? Unless they've had their degree off screen.
Alia's the other one who's got one, and no one likes her either.
Yeah.
And also, speaking of things that he has, that other people have, is long-lost siblings. Because Kevin's got Debbie.
Yeah. This is the kind of thing like, would we want other brothers and sisters to come back? Like,
no. Sally's got a sister called Gina.
I'd kind of like to know. It's just weird that they don't really mention them,
I know, it's weird, isn't it? Fizz and Chesney got a brother called Billy.
Yeah. Gail's
got a brother called, we just mentioned, Stephen. And then Emily has got a brother, 4 sisters, but they're probably all dead.
Emily, I think, it's from what I've seen on the internet, it's a bit vague. I think Emily is the oldest of these brothers and sisters, but there's potentially a load of other little Nugents in the woodwork that could...
come out for a funeral.
Yeah, surely Spider is the son of one of her...
Probably.
Yeah.
Leanne has got Toya, and obviously Kylie's got Becky, but it's a bit... I don't know if it's the same thing.
Out of all of those,
Toya.
Apart from Becky... No, you'd like Toya to come back.
I want Toya to come back and slap Leanne around the face.
I want Becky to come back and slap Michelle around the face.
No, I don't want Becky to come back. Like I said before, she's had her happily ever after, so... Yeah. That's fine.
I suppose it's good when Coronation Street characters do have these people that can go and visit if they have maternity or whatever.
You say it's weird that these people have brothers and sisters and they never speak about them, but I don't. There's quite a few of my friends I don't actually, unless I've met their brothers and sisters, I'm not even really sure if they've got any. Do you know what I mean? I know you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Who've got brothers and sisters, or I don't know. And
I suppose we don't talk about my sister much, do we?
You don't talk about your sister.
And we complain that, why...
I probably talk about her more than you do.
We complain about, why doesn't Debbie and Gina and Stephen and Alan, why do we never see them on the street? But, like, when's my sister ever come here?
Never.
I don't think she ever has, so maybe it is just normal. It's just nice that they're not really close.
Whereas I see my fake sister all the time.
You do, she lives nearby, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Right, so there we go, Andy McDonald. Hopefully a bit of new information for people, because it was for me. Bring him back, please.
Why not?